Learn to work with the people who deserve it, not the people who need it. Key point, learn to work with the people who deserve it, not the people who need it. Now, you've got to set up ahead of time who deserves it. When you bring somebody into the enterprise, you just set it up. Say, when you do this, then we do this. And when you add this to it, then we step in here. When you do all this, then the company, here's what we do after you've done all this. Make sure all those guidelines are clear when you set it up. Now then you know who deserves it. Somebody says, well, I've done this, and you say, fine, okay, we'll step in, we'll do this, we'll give you the backup. You don't respond to need, you respond to who deserves. Now, remember, the pull is in the opposite direction. Guess who wants your help? Usually the wrong people. It's usually the people who need it, not the people who deserve it. But you must, in an enterprise, you must learn to respond to the people who deserve, not the people who need. There's plenty of other places for your benevolence, you know. But in your enterprise, you respond to the people who deserve. Okay. Now then, the next key under leadership in working with a team of people is learn not to linger too long. Now, you've got to have some patience, right, in working with people. You've got to give people time, but not forever. You can't linger too long. And that's another Bible story, right? Jesus got his disciples together one day and said, look, we're going to go evangelize the world. We've been together 3.5 years. It's now time to put the story on the people. And sure enough, the last 2,000 years, it's been a unique project, evangelizing the world. He said, here's how we're going to do it to start with. We're going to divide up 2 by 2. You two take that city. You two take that city. Story said he divided them up 2 by 2 and sent them out to the various cities and said, go to the city, 2 of you tell the story. Then he said, if they buy the story fairly soon, stay. I guess, right? Put it all together, start the classes, get the church going, whatever. Get the synagogue rolling, whatever it was in those days. And build and grow. But he said, if you walk into a city and you tell the story and they don't respond fairly soon, he said, don't stay. Leave. Now see, that's excellent leadership advice. Don't stay. And the reason is there's too many cities that will to linger long with those that won't. And you're not there to change anyone anyway. You're there to find people who respond to the story. That's who you're looking for, the people who respond. You're not there to wrestle them to the ground. So share and look. Share, look, and pick. And it's easy to pick. You pick the ones who respond. But he said, don't stay. Then he also added, when you walk out of one of those cities that doesn't respond, wipe your shoes off. Right? Whatever that meant. I'm sure in those days that, no telling what that meant. There's some modern gestures that are easier to understand, but, you know. But he did say, don't stay, don't linger too long. And the reason is because there's too many prospects. There's too many people who would be willing and happy for the story, saying, I'm glad you came my way. I've been waiting for this story, right? There's so many like that you don't want to wrestle and worry and try to change people who are not going to respond. So that's good leadership information. Don't linger too long. Next is, don't expect the pear tree to bear apples. Let everybody do what they can do. Because you can teach on apples and hang apples on a pear tree, try to get it started. You can put up a sign that said, this is an apple tree. I mean, you can play all kinds of tricks. But sure enough, come season, you got pears. So let people do what they're going to do. Find out what the response is. Find out where people can fit in your organization. Let them fit there. Let them grow to that position. Okay, let people become what they're going to become, be what they're going to be. But leadership learns the skill of selectivity rather than trying to remake people, because you can't make people become successful. Then one more point on building a successful team of people, two more. One is leadership should learn when you've got too many people for any one single enterprise. You've got too many that have lost touch, they've lost out, they've fallen behind. Just every once in a while you got to go through and rework your list and go through and see who's still got the fire and the excitement and the joy and the vigor and the vitality, and then you've also got to analyze who have lost it. And that's just part of the process of building a good team. You just got to go through. You just got to take a fairly frequent look to see who you've got. Because sometimes you wind up with too many. And that's an Old Testament Bible story, right? Story of Gideon, the Jewish hero, military hero. Interesting story. Story says, the angel of the Lord appeared unto Gideon and said, you've been chosen to raise an army and chase off the Midianites. And the Israelites were having a problem with the Midianites. I guess they were in God's doghouse for a while, right? And he sent the Midianites along to, rough them up and push them around and give them all kinds of heartache and trouble. And the Midianites were good at it because they were mean and ugly. They were bad news. But I guess finally they'd learned their lesson, right? And it was time for the Midianites to go. So the word was, Gideon, you raise the army, chase off the Midianites. Gideon said, no problem. Promptly became one of the world's all-time great recruiters. I don't know what all he did. Put up the little booths, join now, whatever. Clever advertising. But anyway, he got the job done. Within a short period of time, Gideon raised an army of 32,000. Short time. Is fairly proud of himself. Brings his 32,000 to the good Lord and said, I did as you commanded, I now have an army. We're ready for the Midianites. Good Lord says, good job, Gideon. You got to be one of the earth's noble. However, we got a problem. Gideon says, what is it? I'll fix it. The good Lord said, well, I appreciate your recruiting effort, but you got too many. Gideon says, wow, I don't understand that. The Midianites were mean. They were bad. Gideon might have said, I wished I had about 10,000 more. And to take a look at the Midianites, he could have done with 10,000 more. But anyway, the good Lord says, hey, take my word for it. You got too many. And Gideon says, well, what shall I do? The good Lord says, try this. Get them all together in one place, stand up, give your last ringing military speech. We're going to go conquer the Midianites. When you finish with your speech, say, if there's anybody here that's afraid we're going to lose the upcoming fight with the Midianites, you can be excused, no questions asked, just go home. Can't use you. Gideon said, clever idea. Got them all together, gave his last ringing military speech, wound it up by saying, if there's anybody here that's afraid with the upcoming battle that we're going to lose, you can just quietly go home. We don't need you. And sure enough, some left that were afraid they were going to lose. And the number was 22,000. Now, I don't know if they wrote pink slips or what they did, right? But Gideon says, how true. If you've got 32,000 and 22,000 think you're going to lose, guess what? You're going to lose. You can't use that many losers. Gideon says, home. 22,000 go home. Gideon says, no problem, we'll do it with 10. And the good Lord said, you've still got too many. Gideon says, well, what now? The good Lord says, try this. March the 10,000 till they're hot and thirsty down by the river. And when you get to the river, the ones that just jump in, throw their spear down, throw their shield down, just jump in the water and start drinking. Said, you can't use them. They're too reckless. They're too careless. They're not vigilant. And you don't have time to train them. But the ones that keep the spear and the shield, and just lap the water like a dog and keep looking around. Those are the ones that are ready. And those are the troops you can use to fight the battle. Gideon said, how clever. Marches the 10,000 till they're hot and thirsty down by the river. And sure enough, some jumped in. They were careless. They threw down their spear, threw down their shield, jumped in the water, started drinking. And the number was 9,700. 300 that were left got the spear and the shield. Right? Gideon says, you 9,700 home. So they go dripping home. Gideon now has 300 out of 32,000 and says, no problem. However, we got to have a clever plan. So he puts together this incredibly clever plan. He says, what we will do, we'll use the element of surprise. In the middle of the night, we will surround the camp, and we'll space ourselves all around the camp of the Midianites. And Gideon says, when I give the word, we'll have a pitcher with a light in it. And we'll break that, show the light, and we'll each have a trumpet. And we'll blast on the trumpets, and then we'll scream and yell like Comanches. Or like something, whatever. That's what he said. 300 say, no problem. Sure enough, they surrounded the camp, middle of the night. Midianites were asleep. Gideon gives the signal. They break the pitchers, show the light in the middle of the night, blast on these trumpets, and they scream and yell. The Midianites were asleep. They came awake hearing this incredible sound. It sounded like there were 300,000. They got so frightened and so confused, they started fighting each other. Story says most of them went by their own sword. And the ones that were left are making it over the hill, 300 in hot pursuit. And Gideon becomes the great military hero. His story is preserved. And part of the lesson is, when you start an enterprise and you want to accomplish something, you got to keep checking to make sure you haven't got too many that have lost the joy, they've lost the excitement, they've lost the vigor and the vitality and the feeling for success. And you just got to go through and find some little tests or something that will start showing you who you've got that's going to help you get the job done. It's part of the challenge of leadership.